If you've been addicted to Vampire Survivors, first of all, contact your doctor, and secondly, I know how you feel. You've been on the hunt for a game similar to it since you've grown a little bit tired of the original, and you've tried others like Brotato or Soul Survivors, and they just haven't done it for you. Well, here we have Boneraiser Minions, which I think might just scratch that itch. I really like this game, and I'm going to tell you why it's good, how it innovates on things from Vampire Survivors, what really makes it stand out to me, and why I think it's the best one of these that has come out in a while. In full transparency, I have played the game for approximately 8 hours. In that time, I have finished the entire meta progression, which has given me access to all of the modes, but I have not explored them all fully since I've only played it for 8 hours. I think that I've played enough, though, to tell you what I think. Firstly, this comes from a single dev, and that is always impressive, Kays, and he's currently asking €4, or your equivalent in dollars, I assume $5, for the game, which I think is a good price. If you're just looking to know if you are going to get a Vampire Survivors like that is good in this game, I would say yes, definitely go buy it. But if you need to know more, let me tell you about it. It has a very similar structure to all of these Survivor-likes that we are seeing, where you have a meta progression, where you can upgrade your characters, your items, and just your overall stats for every single run, and then you go into each run, try to reach the end, and obtain currency to upgrade. But it has some differences compared to Vampire Survivors. First of all, you're not locked to a certain amount of items, and you're not even collecting items themselves. Your main way of attack is by raising minions. You create a little necromancy army to follow you around and attack. So it adds a little wrinkle of strategy because it's not just about your positioning, it's about your positioning relative to where your army is going to attack and where they are moving around the map. That's already cool enough, but you also get dashing, spells, and relics. So relics are basically passive upgrades. Some are very useful, some are very basic. They range from anywhere between doing more damage to certain types of enemies, dashing faster, lower cooldown, running faster, obtaining more money from chests, into just weird stuff like higher chance of eggs or a higher chance of a certain type of minion that you can summon. The way that you keep upgrading through the tree is by eventually combining minions and then either making them demonic versions, or you can make them giant versions, or you can make them melded versions, which is combining the abilities of multiple ones into these blue guys. So there's a lot of different trees that you can follow to upgrade those minions, and it's really fun to explore because each of them do different flashy things, and even when you think you've reached the end of a tree, there is another combination, like another step of, well, hey, now you have demon minions, but if you get 2 demon minions, you can create a Diablos minion, which is even crazier. And that's always fun. That always keeps you intrigued and wanting to play more. That satisfies that one more run because you want to see if you can build an even crazier army next time around, which is an integral component of these types of games. On top of that, the characters are really different. It's not just that they start with different minions, it's that they completely change the style. So there's a character, the Dollmaker, that just doesn't use zombies. She hires townspeople, essentially, she summons wax people instead of skeletons. So her entire tree is just a completely different thing that reuses the assets of the enemies. There is one that instead of having minions, when you raise a minion, you just obtain that ability. So basically you are Vampire Survivors at that point, where instead of having a minion that shoots fireballs or a minion that shoots arrows, you just shoot everything all of the time from yourself. There is a melee focus character that's based on lifesteal. There's a character that focuses exclusively on creating giants, another one that's exclusive to creating demons, another one that's exclusive to creating contraptions, another one that's exclusive to creating melders. And they play very, very differently one from the other, and you really have to rethink your strategy and focus on the strengths of that character, or just completely change your playstyle to reach the end. But I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit too much, so let's talk about the differences that it has. The game includes a dash mechanic and includes spells. So this is an additional item aside from raising minions and getting relics, which are the passives. You can dash and you can summon spells. The spells can go from really powerful stuff like giant fireballs or raining lightning to you got a little bit of gold, or you made the XP on the screen more valuable. It's fun. It's a nice mechanic. It's a different change of pace to have like an active ability that you put in your inventory and you plan around it. I wasn't the biggest fan at the beginning, but I've gotten used to it, and some of them, if you keep track of what you actually have in your inventory, work as a panic button. The other big difference is the enemies. I would say there's something like 20, probably close to 30 different enemy types, and they do change quite a lot. Not every single enemy is different or has different attack patterns or projectiles or anything, but there's a fair amount, I would say 10 to 12 different enemy types between those sorts of things, like projectiles, bombs. You have some that rush you in zigzags, some that are faster, some that leave puddles of goo or fire. And then more importantly, you have bosses. The bosses are really cool. So you get 3 bosses per run, 3 different mini bosses, and they shift, so you get different ones on each run, and they all have very specific attack patterns that kind of function like bullet hell style. So you have to learn to dodge and recognize their patterns to get through them. And then you have the final boss, which is always the same every time. When it comes to the music in the game, I know music is a really big part of Vampire Survivors. Some people really love that soundtrack. They like to zone out to it. This is all chiptune music, and it goes from pleasant to some really cool bangers. There's some tracks here that sound like if one of Drake's producers, back when Drake actually made good music, was making chiptunes, and those I enjoy quite a lot. The music changes not from stage to stage, but from certain key points. So like after certain upgrades or after the stage transitions through the phases of the stage as you move towards the final one, it will change the track and it keeps it fresh. Maybe not my favorite soundtrack in the world, but it is good enough. It's serviceable for what it does. Once you get through all of the meta progression, which includes upgrading all of your stats across all of the characters, like all your passive abilities that you can get, you can also upgrade with a different currency. Each character has their own tree to make them more powerful, so you have that entire progression to go through if you're a completionist. And then you also have a way to upgrade enemies to make the waves more varied, and different enemies that provide different things. So if you invest in summoning bees, when you kill the bees, they'll give you extra HP, and so on and so forth with a lot of other stuff. You get enemies that drop specific things, and once you have everything unlocked, it's just chaotic and you get a lot of bonuses. It is technically an upgrade. And once you get through all of the meta progression, you unlock everything in the game to go more wild with and kind of focus on farming for the tokens and the resources that you're actually going to use in the run, or the resources to upgrade each of the characters. So you get 10 stages that you can select from. Each one increases the difficulty and the rewards you're going to get for that run. And you have some other extra modes, including like a deck building mode. But more importantly, in the 1.0 release, they have Castle Conquest. So this mode is a stage-based progression where each round, each normal phase that you would get in a traditional run is now in one of the stages, and when you finish that phase, you get to choose which path to take to a different stage with better or worse rewards, and you have to do that for, I believe, 14 different stages. So it's a lot longer, and it's a continuous progression. So I like this mode a lot. It lets you build bigger armies, and it varies more because you get to change the stages, and each of the stages has hazards. They're not huge, they're just the same kind of square area, rectangular maybe. It's not like Vampire Survivors. They started going into crazy stuff of each stage has its own layout and weird challenges, like reach the very far west of this stage while holding this item. This game doesn't have any of that. It's just that the stages are visually distinct and have different hazards in them. But that's cool. It keeps it fresh, and in this mode, you get to progress through them more organically, and I like it a lot. It is longer, and it does let you save between each of the levels, because I haven't finished it. It gets really hard. It ramps up a lot more because it is longer, so there's more expectations for absolute chaos and having a more optimized build towards the end, but it is a really good idea. It might be a little slow in some cases, and it does ruin that maybe 15-minute to maximum 20-minute runs that you get in a normal game like this, and it stretches it out into what I would assume is more around the hour to hour something mark. So if you don't have the time, or if you don't like the game as much, you're not going to enjoy it, but I think it's really smart and a good way to improve or to move forward in this genre with fresh ideas. The final thing is the only thing I don't like about the game, which is the aesthetics. I think that the art in the game is beautiful. It looks fantastic, but it's just not my style. There's a lot of effort put into all of the pixel art. It looks gorgeous by itself, and it looks cohesive and well done. And if you are liking what you see on the screen, then you should 100% go pick this game up, because as you can see, the gameplay stands up really well and the aesthetics are great. But if you don't like what you see on the screen, I still think it's worth picking up, because I like the game, even though the aesthetics, I can appreciate all of the things that are done in it. I just don't like it that much. In the beginning, I had a lot of difficulties with visual clutter and identifying what was going on and what were my minions and what were enemies and things like that. But I think that's normal in the genre until you learn the visual language. You kind of store it in your memory bank. And I can now understand, let's say 90% of the time, what's going on without losing my character. And it does have accessibility options. So if you are a person that traditionally struggles with those sorts of things, you can put different colored borders and effects on your character, your friendly minions, your enemy minions, and I think on the attacks as well. Although don't quote me on that. All in all, if you are a fan of the survivor-like genre, this one is one that you really should play. I think it's on sale right now for €3.39, which is going to translate, I think, to around $4.50, maybe $5, maybe $5 at the most in the US, and or whatever your regional equivalent is. I think it's a great price for this sort of game. I mean, that's the price of like a coffee. So if you like these sorts of games, these more mindless, chill out, listen to a podcast sort of games, this is one that it's the one that has impressed me the most out of the recent ones that I have played as a big fan of the genre and a person with like 140 hours on Vampire Survivors. So give it a shot. If you like the video, if I helped you decide on this game or gave you some useful information, remember to hit the like button. That's important for small channels like mine. And if you want to hear me talk more about all sorts of stuff, just hit the subscribe button and maybe even hit the bell so that you know exactly when I'm talking about stuff. I hope I've been helpful, and y'all have a great day.